downstairs door.
Main door.
We did that.
Huh?
We did that.
No,
The electric lock.
I should never touch.
Oh. They put the electric lock on.
You fix it once and you get called afterwards.
Well, it's good money.
That's your very ancient DAF. Okay, let's get going. What's going on over here? Is the volume on or we turn the volume off? Just now there was this volume sign.
I know.
Looks like it's on.
It's
No, it's on. It looks like it's on.
Oh, it's yeah. Brilliant.
Back. Okay. This evening we're to start a new parak. And this parak is a fascinating and a new volume. This parak is a fascinating parak. There's no town in the world, well maybe there is, maybe in Switzerland, that the town is exactly a square, like a chess. You don't have such a thing. Why is it showing this? Oh, somebody's calling in.
One person's just on the phone.
In America,
they
do that's all street.
Yes, I do. I've watched it. Tell me that. I've never been to America.
Yeah, because they're so dumb.
Why?
And it's
Sounds
got to
very
be square.
Okay.
What do they call glasses? Eyeglasses. What do
Well, let's get on with it because really we need to get over the stuff. I'm sorry, I should have interrupted. Who is that? It looks like okay. Again, there's no city which could be exactly square. If it would be exactly square, how much would you get around the city to be able to walk?
2,000.
2,000. Not everywhere 2,000.
No, the corners.
Very good. How much would you get in the corners? 2,800. 1.4 more. Very good. From the city, you get 2,000 ams.
Oh, right.
So I meant around the city, you get. So if the city would be exactly a square, you'd get 2,000, and in the corners. That's the questions which the next Mishnah and the next Gemara and loads of sugas. What happens if it's a triangle? What happens if it's a rainbow shape? What happens if it's a got loads of stories. This is what the parak is about. So the Mishnah starts off with halachas, and then he goes completely off the point for 2 days, and then he goes back to the halacha. So let's see again. Case of Abin Yisrael. How do you make a city bigger? Why would Abin come to mean bigger? Because for more beres expecting. Okay. You've got staggered houses, right? In King's Road, all the houses basically finish on the same line. Imagine there would be one house, you've got a town, and one of the houses in the town finishes much later, goes out of the line. You're doing a bit of property, right? So the council always makbid about it. But imagine, okay, it's not the edge of the town anyway. If it would be the edge of the town, one of the houses go out. So where do you count 2,000 from? The ones which are further in, further out. Oh, why? Because we'll make up. Very good. You've got towers, and towers have at the bottom of them what's called ramparts. So you've got this massive rampart at the bottom. One goes further in, one goes further out. Or you've got ruins, or top of them, give them showing bridges. And we show you not about normal bridges, it's about bridges that people live on. Somebody told me they're in Venice. There are bridges that people live on the bridge. I don't know, I've never been there. But the first choice, or kvorim, places where people are buried, and used to make a very nice room for the guard to be there, etc. As obvious. We count from the furthest out, and then after that we do 2,000 amas, and we square it off in order to get the corners. So now, if you look, there's actually quite a few pictures, but I don't know if you need the pictures because it's all quite easy to picture. I just show one picture. Oh, see, you've got a picture over here. You've got a house sticking out. Right?
Basically, take the outer
rampart. The outer line, and they square it off. I hear Rashi is very mild to point out one thing. That when you square it off, it doesn't mean literally square it off. Because if this is the town, let's say this is the shape of the town. To make it a real square, you would have to, let's say this is 2,000, this is 1,000 amos. So you'd have to make it huge to make it a real square. That's not right. What it means is you square it off in the sense that that the corners, you gain the corners. But not that you actually, if there's a rectangle of 2,000 by 1,000, then you make it 2,000 by 2,000 and then you square it off like that, because that would be much too much. Rather, you square off the corners are squared off. But if it's long and narrow, so then you add 2,000 amas this way, 2,000 amas that way, 2,000 amas that way, and you square it off at the corners. But you're not going to say, well, let's make it into a proper square and then add 2,000 amas everywhere. That we don't do. So when we say that you make it squared, we just mean that the corners you gain. Is it clear? Now we're going to have loads of it. We have a shul chatonim me'abim with an ayin, chatonim me'abim with an aleph. Mandatory me'abrin that you say with an aleph eva, we're adding limbs. Mandatory me'abrin kisha upo like an expecting woman. Now it's Chios and Sukkah writes that from this Gemara it's proven that when even Amorim, because these are Amorim, which generation of Amorim were they? There were 6 generations of Amorim. Which generation was the Rav and Shmuel in? The very first. You don't know. You should really know the history of basic Amorim because it's very easy. Rav Yehuda was the 2nd generation. You learned by Rav, you learned by Shmuel, right? Rabbi was the 3rd generation. Rabbi learned. I have not made the chart, but it's been very hard to print out.
Long time project of yours.
I did. I made a project. Okay, fine. I thought you'd be. Rav and Shmuel is clear with the first. Anyway, but that generation, the Mishnayos were not yet printed. They were not yet written. Why were they not written? Because had they been written, does anybody have a question? Does Asher start with an aleph and ayin? Nobody has that question. Why? Because you can see it in print. Okay, also because you can no, it doesn't because that's not the first possible. Our Mimcha is the first possible. There's guys on Asher doesn't. Again, but why not? Because you see it in front of you. The fellow Rav and Shmuel could argue about such a thing as a raya that they couldn't see it in front of them.
How did they have text?
No, what they did is they memorized the Mishnayos. Since they memorized them, so therefore they knew the text by memory. But then by memory, if how don't you heard Ashrei by hearing, then I might not be able to know.
They heard it from Rav and Shmuel.
Rav and Shmuel heard it from the Rebbe. Rav and Shmuel heard it from Yehuda Nossi. Right. Now we have more machliks Rav and Shmuel. Since we had one, we have other ones. Mo'asa machpela. Rav and Shmuel chadam ashtei bottoms with one house within the next. The chadam abayis v'aliyah gabba was upstairs and downstairs. Bishlam mandom azal gav ze upstairs and downstairs. Hanu machpela double. El mandom ashtei bottoms ma machpela. Why is it called double? The fact it's got one house inside the other doesn't make it double. So a lot of houses have one inside the other. Double is something significant. So if upstairs and downstairs, it's quite a chiddush. In old days, having an upstairs was a big thing. So therefore, that's why it's called machpela. But here, how can you call it machpela? Answer the Moshe, kfula bezugos, it was double, that everybody was paired. And the more explains, elaborates, Mamri Kiyas Abba, what's 4, Mabitzchak Kiyas Abba, Zugos, there were 4 pairs. Odom V'chavam, Avom, V'sor, Yitzchak, Rivka, Yaakov, Eleo. So when you study this, why was called Moshe machpela, what would you answer?
2 reasons.
2 reasons. Either it was pairs or very good. Vayibim Amrofel, another machlik Rav and Shmuel. Amrofel was Nimrod. So now the question was, what was his real name? Which one did he get at his bris? And which one did he add? Oh, the word says, machlik Rav and Shmuel. Rav and Shmuel, Chadam Nimrod, Shmuel was called Nimrod. Rav and Shmuel, Amrofel, was called Amrofel. Sh'omar v'hipel Avom, Avinu Sech Giv Shenaish. He threw Avom into the fire. So Amrofel stands for Omar, hole. He said, throw him in. He made the whole world rebel. So either it was called Amrofel, that added the name Nimrod when he rebelled the world, or it was called Nimrod, that added Amrofel when he said to Avram Avinu, throw into the fire. When did he throw Avram Avinu into the fire? And Avram smashed Terach with his arm. Literally knew that he wasn't literally new, but he made new decrees. There's a marsham in Chele Gimel. Oh, you like this, Shua, shouldn't involve. What happens if I say, I'll sell your property, and I say to you, it's brand new. You come to the property, you pay me it, and then you come to the property, and it's not new, it's refurbished. Can you say mekachtos?
Yes.
Now, if you look on eBay, I don't know if you've been on eBay, if you look on eBay, you've got new other, new refurbished, and then you've got second hand or something. Exactly, not exactly sure. Says the Marsham, that it's machlikus Rav and Shmuel, because the pasuk says, "V'yokom melech chodesh hamitzrayim," a new king, and was he new? Was he new?
No,
Machlekes. One says it was literally new. Just one says it was refurbished. He changed. So the Marsham says Machlekes Rav and Shmuel, whether it's a mekachtos, if you buy, or if say, if I remember correctly, by eBay, it says new by refurbished. Does it not say new refurbished?
New other, then that can mean.
Oh,
If you buy something in a second-hand shop, it's new for you, but it's not new.
no. If I say too new, I'm not going to get into halacha l'maisa shaboy. But you should just know that when you has got to have riches of behest she'en kamoyu. Unfortunately, we don't have the time. And I don't have the full knowledge to explain. But it's very interesting. There's always anything you want to ask. Always come up. Even such a question. I was chapped enough from the brilliance of the Marsham that somebody asked him this question. He said, "Okay." So Madavar Chodesh Babish Chsiv Chodesh says new. Madavar Shchashku Yosef the Rexi by Yomos Vayim Lechtin say he died and became king. Madavar Shchashku Yosef Aksiv Asher as Yosef he never knew Yosef. How could he not know Yosef? Now Asher as Yosef David Domi commanded Yosef made Yosef Klal. He pretended not to know Yosef, but really he knew Yosef. Simon Shmonasa 18 Mishneh Moshe and Madavar David Vayovid. It's a what's the word for it? it's a remes for all the next Gemaras which we're going to have. Omar Abichon, Yud Chesamim, 18 days Gedatis, Ravisha, grew up by Ravisha, Bevibi. Bevibi is a title which you give to somebody who's a very, very big Talmud Chacham. Bevibi is like Godel Adoy, Rashke Bahag. Bevibi means a great person. Avavagon. We learned only learned one thing in our Mishnah. What did he learn? Kis Rabbi Sorim Ba'alef. That the word in our Mishnah is with the Aleph, not an Ayin. Fin more Is that all he learned? He had 12 Tamidim. Yud Chesamim Gedat B'Neim. I learned that for 18 days. I learned in 18 days every person's heart and mind. Rasha's heart refers to a person's sharpness, his ability to understand new things. Chochma is how much knowledge he has. Some people have very lots of knowledge, not good at chapping new things. Some people have a lot of quick knowledge, but not a lot of stored. So he knew the knowledge and hearts of every single one of them. So how can you say they only learn one thing? Answers are more three answers. He understood and he knew every person's character, but he didn't learn any Gemara. So the 18 days he spent understanding people's nature in order to be able to make them steig. Suchazisa was very big in Sefer, Pinkas HaKabbalus. He writes that he used to spend a lot of time thinking about every Talmud, what's the best way to approach them. So you sometimes have to think the Chachma of a Talmud. Ibo said the second answer, okay, he learned from the Talmidim. But from the Rebbe he never learned. That means he learned them from them, not from the Rebbe. He learned one thing from our Mishnah. He learned many things. On this Mishnah, he only learned one thing. What did he learn? An Avin is with an Aleph, not with the Ayin. We sit four people in an Amo. How big is an Amo? 60 centimeters squared. So 4 people in 60 squared, that's basically the size of that chair, the seat of that chair, maybe slightly smaller. So you got 4 people in such a chair. Let's carry on. Says the Gemara, we sat 6 to an Amo. Can you imagine 6 people sitting on such a chair? It's nice like a gerbes. What do you see from that? That when there's a will, there's a way. Like you see people between Yom Kippur and Sukkot, it's got no time. When there's a will, they come to Dafshir. Shows you that chashivos that people have for Torah. When there's a will, there's a way. 6 people to Namo. Marshal says it was a nest because it says otherwise it would have been impossible. Abishua was like Roshia was like Romer. Nobody could work out what he meant. He was so wise. Nobody could work out what he thought because they were so wise. Roshia was so great. The heart of the Shem was as big as the size of the Ulam. How big was the Ulam, the entrance of the Ulam? How much? 40 by 20. How do you know? The first Gemara in Eiruvin, it was 40 by 20 amos. It's quite big. A heart's the size 40 by 20. The later generations, how big was the entrance of the Eichel? No, 20 by 10. So one generation got to a quarter of the size. And how big is our heart? The eye of a needle. How many eyes of a needle can you get in a 40 by 20 amos? Probably millions, billions. And that was from just one generation to the next. You see how little, how the Yehuda Steinberg is unbelievable. This is such chalishas. What? And this is thousands of years ago. Rishonim was Rabbi Akiva, Achronim Alon Shamua, Ikadami Rishonim Alon Shamua, Achronim Rabbi Shebrebi. But Anu K'Nekim Achat Sitkis, and we are like the size of an iron needle. Can you imagine such a thing? Omar Baba Non Kisichse B'Gudel Lekamo. That's how big our heart is. But when we try to learn new things, it's like sticking a peg in a small hole. The hole is too small. Oh, you were building before, yes. So if you try to get a peg into a small hole, you can't manage. When it comes to learning new things, we can't get it into our heads. We're like a finger in wax for svor. The Marshal says that you can't get your finger into wax at all. With a peg into a hole, a little bit you can get it in, but your finger into wax you can't get it at all. The Chasam Sofer in Shuvah writes a very interesting thing. He says wax is malleable. You can actually move it a little bit. He says one day you can press it that way, next day you can press it a different way. He says our logic is not solid. So it's like pushing a finger into wax. One day we think this way, next day we think that way. Many times I have it myself. If somebody says to me something, I think, oh, you say good point. Next person says, oh, yeah. That's what he meant. And this is referred to. We're like a finger in a pit to forget. How easy is it to get a finger into a huge pit? Dead easy. It goes straight, it's a huge area. So we forget so easy that getting a finger through a pit. So this is another pshat, is that when you put your finger into a pit full of mustard seeds, so when you put your finger in, so there's a hole. You've made a hole in it. You take your finger out, what happens? Imagine like salt, it fills in immediately. So Torah is the same thing with us. When we learn Torah, as we're learning, we know what we're learning. We stop for a second, and it's closed up as if it never happened or
Because
forget
there's
it
so much more
completely.
stuff. That makes sense.
Why?
It shouldn't be an empty pit because we're full of rubbish
Ah,
that we don't get the Torah.
well, very
stuff,
nice. I hear.
Otherwise, why can't, if you've got an empty pit, you should have loads.
No, but the Gemara is trying to say how easy it is to forget. It's like it's very hard to push a peg into a hole, but to put your finger into a pit is the easiest thing in the world. But you taste the ads, it's like putting a finger into a pile of seeds, of very small seeds, and as you take your finger out, it covers itself over stuff you don't know it anymore. There's so much more to say, but okay, we'll see how much we've got at the time. Omar Yehuda, Omar Rab, Bnei Yehuda. Now the Gemara over here goes through quite a difficult point, is speaking about language. I was very impressed that the Rambam Pirush Mishnayos, a couple of days ago, the Rambam Pirush Mishnayos writes, why was Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi zeichet to write the Mishnayos? There were many reasons, right? He was a huge Talmid Chacham, he was the Gadol HaTorah, he was a Nasi. And one of the reasons is, he had a very good command of language and a very good way of describing things. So therefore his language it's very important when you're speaking to use good language, not just good language, but also clean and refined language. And then not the next more is all about language, to use the right language. It's very interesting. Steve Baxter said to me that after you learn the Gemara and get it very clear, I should write down how I would like the Rambam, the Psak Halacha, and then look in the Rambam and see how the Rambam in 10th of the words includes 10 times as much more information. He has a beautiful ability to summarize and to clarify things. It's always a good way of doing things. So that was going to discuss language. They were very makpid, particular about the language. And he's coming to us beyond the Torah remained in the hands. They go to Shleik Bidol Shenam, and he's coming to us beyond the Torah did not remain. If anyone it's about being particular, so I'll explain a bit more. They were precise. Precise is not being particular. Precise is make sure to get the right word. And they kept Simon and he's coming to us beyond. They go to the weren't precise, and they never made for themselves signs. Learn is coming to us beyond the Torah never kept. They learned from one Rebbe and he's coming to us beyond. Because they only learned from one Rebbe, they remembered it. When they go to the they never learned from one Rebbe. If they learned from many Rebbes, learn is coming to us beyond. So from this Gemara, is it better to learn from one Rebbe or many Rebbes? What's better? No, the Gemara says clearly if they learned from one Rebbe, they remembered it. But the others who learned from many Rebbes, they didn't remember it. So from this Gemara, it's clear that what's better to learn from one Rebbe. Doing shopping, hopping from one Rebbe to another. You should learn from one Rebbe. Fake taste verse that the Gemara says that if you only learn from one Rebbe, you'll never succeed in life.
Yeah, but those days it wasn't only one Rebbe.
No, we learned earlier on. If you got a Rebbe in the Chutzah, you have to leave.
Right. Okay, that's because it's a better Rebbe, maybe. Okay, so Taisa says there's two different parts of learning Torah. One is understanding, logic. One is information. Information, halacha, you should learn from one Rebbe. Because if you go from one to one, each one's got a different way to set it up, right? So one person teaches, you have to get information, you have to get from one Rebbe. The ways of thinking, the more Rebbes you have, it gives you, introduces you more ways of tackling a question. More carries on. Ravina Omar, Bnei Yehuda, the Golem Masechta, they would reveal the Masechta, meaning they would explain the Masechta, and it's coming to us beyond them. They got the Golem Masechta, they did not reveal the Masechta, and it's coming to us beyond them. David Gali Masechta revealed the Masechta, Sholo Gali Masechta. David Gali Masechta revealed the Masechta, Ksiv Be'yirecha Yiruni V'Yismochu. Those who fear Hashem would see me and they would rejoice. Because they would see Dov the Melech learning, they would see that Dov the Melech would get it right. And they would see he would get the right Psak Halacha. So those who fear Hashem would rejoice when they saw Dov the Melech. When you write the Shai Tshuva, towards the end of the Shai Gimel, that it requires a certain daga and loving Hashem and fearing Hashem, that when the person sees somebody else doing a mitzvah, he rejoices. Most people. If I was to say to you that somebody, your friend, your competitor, your brother, just now finished Shas. So what happens is, with the rejoicing, there's always a certain amount of pain. Why did he and not me? There's always the jealousy aspect, etc. There's the wanting to should be that I should be the one to have done it. He says somebody who fears, really loves Hashem, he wants that the job should be done. Somebody opens up a yeshiva and he's very, very matzliach. Somebody opens up a chesed gemach, he's very, very matzliach. And he says, well, I wanted to open that chesed gemach, not. So therefore, by those who fear Hashem would see the Melech learning and they would rejoice. It's something that the person should be considered. Anyway, sure. What? I said very quickly, I said too fast. To reveal Masechta means to explain the Masechta properly, to reveal the reasoning behind every halacha in the Masechta. The Meiri, as you since already asked the question, the Meiri says to reveal the Masechta is that before you give a shiur, to give a list of ma'am and kremas of what you're going to speak about. So you're revealing what your drush is going to be about. Since they were makbid to do that, so the people understood the shiur better. Imagine it's interesting, Meiri. Show the Lugolim Masechta, Ksibbe El Kol Yifna, wherever he would turn, Nun Gimel on base Yarshia. The simple pshat in the pasuk is like this: that wherever Shalom Melech went to war, he would always win. Since he would always win, he would terrorize all the nations around him. So Kol Yifna, wherever he would turn, Yarshia, he would cause fear. The Gemara is over here saying B'derech Drush, not the simple explanation, B'derech Drush, that the word Yarshia can also mean from the word Rasha. That whichever way Shalom Melech turned, he became a Rasha, meaning that Shalom Melech always passed incorrectly. Does anybody know an halacha lemaisa that Shalom Melech paskins? You know, anybody know Maseches Kedushin? Shalom Melech paskins that mekadesh b'milva mekudeshes. You can mekadesh one by saying to her that the loan that she owes you is for you're being moichet. We don't paskin like that. You can't be mekadesh one with a loan. You have to be mekadesh with a new item. Let's say a woman owes you £1. You go to her and say to her, look, I'll let you off the pound, be mekudeshes to me. She's not mekudeshes, not like Shalom. Okay. How do you know that Hashem forgave him for that sin? The Vilna Gaon in Parshas Balak tells us there's a big difference in every word in Rosh HaKodesh is very, very exact. So what's imcha mean? With you. Itcha, what's itcha mean? Also with you. So what's the difference in imcha and itcha? Oh, very good. Where did you get it from? Imcha and itcha. Imcha means with you properly, with mind and heart and soul. Itcha means I happen to be with you. Let's say you're walking along burying you, and you want to go to shopping, somebody else is going to shul place. You happen to be walking together. So you're together, but you're not together literally. Imcha and itcha. So therefore, over here the pasuk says, tomorrow you'll be imi, with me. Imi b'mechitzasi. Who said those words? Who said those words to Shalom Melech? Shmuel. Shmuel said to Shaul, tomorrow you'll be with me in my mechitza. That means tomorrow Shaul spent the rest of it. Shaul HaMelech is now with Shmuel HaNavi in Gan Eden. Imagine such a thing. If I'm saying too fast and not clear, you should stop it. If somebody would ask Bnei Yehuda, the Dai Kidishna, because as we said before, they're very precise. Me'abin down with an aleph, or me'abin down with an ayin. Akuzutan or akuzutan. Here's a new topic. It's like this. If a person has a firstborn animal, sheep or cow, what does he have to do with it? Give it to a kohen. No, not Petchavoy is only a donkey. Gives it, no, B'choy, not Maisa. Maisa is 10th. B'choy means the firstborn sheep, firstborn guy, give it to a kohen. What does the kohen do with it? But where he has to eat it as a korban in the Beis Mikdash. Not always is it convenient. First of all, today there's no Beis Mikdash. And even the time Beis Mikdash, not always is so easy. So what did the kohen always want that there should be? A mum. Once there's a mum, he's allowed to eat it wherever he wants. One of the mumim is that if an animal only has one egg, the place where the animal can reproduce, if it only has one egg, is a mum. And the Gemara talks about what happens if he has two testicles, two packets, two pouches, but only one egg. So the question is, we don't really know. So what we do is we make the animal sit on its hindquarters behind, and then you massage between its legs, and then you can see and you can feel if it's got one egg or two. If a taka only has one egg, then it's a mum. So the hindquarters, the behind, it's got a word akuzu or yakuzu. We don't know if it spells with an aleph or with an ayin. That's the question over here. So Yodi, they knew, Shalino, they asked them, they said to them as follows. That means all four expressions, akuzu with the aleph, akuzu with an ayin, me'abim with the aleph, me'abim with the ayin, are all precise languages. That means the Bnei Yehuda said that all of it is true, not just the ones which we said, but all of them are true, and therefore all four languages are precise. It says, well, what does it mean that they were medayek, that they were precise? Somebody from the Yehuda means over here the area in Eretz Yisrael called Yehuda. So he said, I've got a cloak to sell. What color is your talis? Like beets growing from the ground. Now, what could he have said? Says the Master, could have said green, yorok. Why didn't he say yorok? Because the word green, yorok, can sometimes mean yellowish or greenish. For example, by an esrog, yorok. We know an esrog could be green. Does it have to be a yellow esrog or green esrog? That's the Lord discusses it in Sukkah here, and also the Master mentions it. So if he would have said, if I say to you, I've got a coat to sell, and he says, well, what color? And I say yorok, so you've got no idea what color my coat is. It could be yellowish, it could be greenish. So what did he do? To be precise, he said that it's the color of beets growing out of the ground. As they're coming out of the ground, they've got a very strong greenish color. So that shows a preciseness that he didn't use a language which is ambiguous. says, well, Bnei Gola, Deloitte Condition Mai. What's mean Bnei Gola that they were not precise? Dahu Ba Galila. There was this person from the Gola. Tabika Ozel, Omar Luhu, Omar Leman, Omar Leman. He was trying to, what's the words for it? He was saying that he wants to buy a, what's the word for it? He wants to buy Omar. Now, he didn't speak clearly. He slurred his language, right? So what happened was, the Gemara now gives 4 different ways of understanding what he actually was looking for. Do you mean a donkey to ride? Because Amor and Chamor sound very similar. Or Chamor Mishti, or do you mean wine to drink? Because if you remember, Chamor is wine. Amor Milbush, are you looking for wool to wear? Or Imel is Kasor, or a sheep to shecht. That means when he said, I'm on the man, they're not speaking clearly. We actually have no idea what he wants. There's 4 different explanations. Either he wants a donkey or wine or sheep or wool. So therefore, by not speaking precisely, we don't know what he wants. It's important that when you speak it is be precise, because if not, people don't understand what you're saying. When you write halacha down, that's a Rebbe, we know what's on halacha. You have to write it in the most precise way. There was a woman that wanted to say to her friend, Toi, come to I'll give you milk to drink, or fat. She said to her friend, come to my house and I'll give you something to eat. But she didn't speak clearly, and she slurred her language. And what she ended up saying was complete nonsense. She said to her like this, Shluchosi. She meant to say Shluvosi, which means my companion. But she slurred the base and made it into Chof, said Shluchosi. Rashi says there's no such word. There's no word called Shluchosi. Tuchlich lavi, a lion should eat you. Instead of saying to ochli chalbo, she slurred the words and she said tuchlich lavi, a lion should eat you. Imagine she said to her friend, "Is invited to eat milk?" She said the lion should eat you because she didn't speak clearly. It's another woman who also didn't speak clearly. And what happened was like this: she was going to Beis Din because a tablet of wood had been stolen from her, and what she wanted was the Dayan to demand to find out to get it back for her. But she didn't speak clearly, and she ended up making a lot of mistakes. That's the Kaveda Dina. She went in front of the judge. Omole, you have to look at each word properly. Mori Kiri. Kiri with a kuf is a master. But Kiri with a chof means a slave. So my master, my slave. It doesn't make any sense. Taflo obviously. And she said it with a base, tablo, should have meant a tablet. Instead, she said taflo, which means a beam. Tavla obviously, I had a beam when she meant a tablet. The gomvuch min. Now she meant to say gomvu mimeni. They stole it from me. Instead, she said the gomvuch. They stole you min. They stole you from me. She said to the judge, they've stolen you from me, which also doesn't make any sense. The chadu avus, and she meant to say the chedein avus. This is how it looked like. Chedein means so. Instead, she said the chadu and now, which also doesn't make any sense. And now here, not only she spoke imprecisely, she also used a very silly example. She wanted to describe how big the board was. So what did she say? That if we would hang you on the board, you the judge, then your feet would still not reach the bottom. It means it was a very big board. Now using that as an example for the size of the board was not going to make her find favor in the eyes of the judge. It's not a nice particular way to describe it. Again, this also shows language. If they would hang you on the board, you will not reach your feet to the ground. So here we see an unpleasant description. So for not only she slurred the words, but she also did not know how to speak too clearly. Answer to be Rebbe. The maid servant of Rebbe was very particular in her language. Why was she very particular in her language? Because she was in Rabbi Yehuda house and she was influenced. I once saw a joke, not a particularly nice one, but the mice is a good lesson. A girl comes home and she says an unpleasant word, swear word or something. So the husband turns around to his wife and says, where in using all kinds of nasty words, swear words, did she ever learn to speak like this? What do you mean? That's how you speak. It's a very, very important message. The maid servant of Rebbe grew up in Rebbe's house, she knew. Now, when she spoke in wisdom, she would say, she should say as follows. Now, she would want to tell the Talmidim that she's got no food left, they may as well go home, because she used to feed them food. Now, you don't want to say to somebody, I've got no food, go. So what she would speak is in a metaphor, in order they should chap it on their own. She would say like this, Alas, the ledum, nokvas bekad, is knocking in the barrel. When you've got a lot of food in the barrel, what happens is it doesn't knock against the sides, but when it's empty, it just knocks. Nishraya, the eagles, likinaya, yidun nishraya likinaya, let the eagles fly to the nest, meaning you may as well go home. just a very short taste of the top tasteless, into tasteless. We had a Gemara once by Yosef Moike Shabbos. That Yosef Moike Shabbos was very macro about Shabbos and he used to always buy nice things. And once he put a fish, and inside there was a diamond, the diamond of his neighbor, and he sold it and he got 13 Elisa de Dava. Elisa de Dava. That's the expression more used in Shabbos. So Rashi says, what's the word Elisa normally mean? Upstairs, a loft. So he had 13 lofts full of gold. So Rashi says that's impossible, it must be an exaggeration. It says Tesis that we see from this Gemara that alos can also mean a ladle. 13 ladles full of gold is not an exaggeration. So what did Yosef Shabbos get? 13 ladles of gold.
That's so much.
13 ladles full of gold. Right, it's still a ladle full of gold. Okay. When she wanted them to come and eat, she would say like this: Yodi basa chavelto. The piece of the pot should be removed from its friend, meaning the lid should come off the pot. The lid and the pot are like parts of it. What? Because you don't want to say to people, I know this is a good question. For the next few Gemaras, we're going to have a lot of metaphors, and I've asked you can't vouch for people. I've not found anybody who can give me a good answer. Why do you have to speak? This Gemara is not so hard because this Gemara you can answer because you don't want to say come and eat. But later the Gemara uses metaphors which are mind-boggling, which are so complicated you can't understand what it is. Ben Yehuda talks about it, and he says all up Kabbalah. But it's still, I'm saying derech pshat. It's very hard to understand what's going on here. So Yadi Bas Chavelot, let a piece move from its friend, binop, v'tiskus fi alas, and let the ladle float bechad in the bowl, ki ilfat ozla b'yamo, like a boat floating in the sea. That means let the ladle float like a ship. When it floats on the sea, there's a huge amount of water underneath it. So let the ladle float in the pot like a ship on the sea. We would say like this. We don't speak wisdom. Omar asuli. He wanted to eat beets in mustard. Does anybody know the word in our make for beets? We had it actually. Taldin. Taldin is beets. What's mustard? Chardon. Taldin, you can make the word into two. Toil is an ox. Din is justice. Ox of justice is another way of saying beets. Now, char, you can change the ches to hey. So char is har, mountain. Dal is poor. So if I say to you, please make me an ox of justice in a poor mountain, what do I mean? Beets and mustard. By beetroot. Beets. I don't know if beetroot and beets are the same thing. No, they're not.
Beetroot.
Beets or beetroot? I don't know.
What's beets then?
I don't know. Maybe. Okay.
No,
So Oba Asuli, he would say like this. That's how I said. That's why I tried to look for you for your articles.
No,
To
Rosh
describe.
Hashanah, one of the Simonim is beets. Yeah, beetroot, no?
So you had? I don't know. I didn't have beets.
Oh,
Did you?
we'll see if it works.
What did you have? What did you say with it?
Whatever the, what's the...
You had the basis soul, I'm sure. Asuli shoy mishpot. Oh, beets. I don't know, that's why I said.
No, we're not arguing over that. We're arguing does beets mean beetroots?
Asu.
We need to crack on.
You need to crack on. Asuli shoy mishpot. Make me an ox of justice. What's an ox of justice? Beets. This I didn't understand. This is the first time I really got stuck. Like, why didn't I say Tardim? But to miskan in a poor mountain. What's a poor mountain? Chardar. When you want to know how the host is doing, ushpiza, you can split the word into three. Ushpiza. Ush is ish, man. Pu is poi, here. Ze is this. The man here, this, is another way of saying host. Oma, hochi. What?
That's what the word was.
Gva, the man, pu, pum, here, dein, this. Chai, is he alive? Mazu tev what good is he? Meaning, is he well? But you will not speak in this way of wisdom, you say as follows. Make my coals look like a sroigim. Now, if you want to make a fire, you take coals which are black, you light them. What color do they become? Yellowish. So if we make my coals look like a sroigim, make a fire. Very good. Al-kilazov, flatten out gold, means spread out the coals that I should get warm, because if only there's no central heating. So spread out the coals. So spread out the gold means spread out the coals. Making for me two things that reveal in darkness. What are things that reveal in darkness? Chickens. Chickens, they are in the middle of the night, they croak and they tell you it's morning coming. So make for me two things which reveal in darkness. Ikadami, a slightly different version. The has to be bohen. Make for me in those coals, magidi by lots of things which are reveal in darkness. with Rabbi is hidden, and we don't know where he is, and we want to know where he is. Omar Lohen. So he said to him like this: all that's for now. He rejoiced with a girl, Aaronis, with a maiden. Aaronis from Aaron, meaning she is from Kahuna. Achronis, the latter one. Eiruvin, the lively one. Then Rosish kept him awake. Because she kept him awake, he's gone to sleep. Some say it means he was talking about a wife, some say Masechta. And Rashi explains each one separately. Going back, if it's a wife, what happened was he lost his first wife, Rashi says. And the Rashi would say, because if he hadn't lost his first wife, why was he so happy to get married? Okay, it's a bit long. Because the question is, why did Rashi say that he lost his wife? Maybe it's a second wife. So Rashi says, because if it would be a second wife, you won't have the same joy. You only get the most joy from your first wife. Okay. Some say it was a wife. Now Avonis, she came from Shevet Kona. Why did he mention it from Shevet Kona? Because the Talmud Chacham Shmaya Bas Kohen. The Bas Kohen is for the Talmud Chacham. There was those, I should say this, were nervous about marrying a Bas Kohen if they're not Talmud Chacham. Because the Gemara says that Bas Kohen is royal for Talmud Chacham. I don't know if you could tell that was what? Become one. Yes, but Achroinis, the latter, meaning the latter, the latter one, meaning it's the last wife he's got. The thing. Eiruvin, that she's very lively, meaning that she was somebody vivacious. Then she kept him up all night. That's one pshat. The other pshat is that it's referring to a mesechta. Just like a person is very devoted to his wife, a person should be very devoted to a mesechta. So over here it's referring to like this. He got married, he got rejoiced with a narrow, meaning his wife, mesechta. Avonis, from a kohen. What mesechta would you say if it means kohen? Kodshim. I says a mesechta in kodshim. Achroinis, the latter one, meaning it's the last mesechta he's been learning. Eiruvin, meaning he's become very lively in the mesechta. He's become himself completely involved. Then he also he's been up all night learning this mesechta, and that's why he's gone to bed. So it's two shot in what he actually meant.
Why would you refer to women?
No, because that's how I said that. Is that when a person, just like a person is attracted to a woman, a person should be attracted to the Gemara. It means we have it. The Gemara will say that. It says, they said, we don't know where Bavo is hidden now. We're looking for Bavo. He asked permission from the crowner. The crowner is the Nasi who decides who's in charge. The him give. He went to the south. Mephibosheth. Who was Mephibosheth? No, Ishbosheth was the king. I know, I always get confused. But Mephibosheth was not king. Who was Mephibosheth? It was the Rebbe of David HaMelech. We had it in Brochas, Daf Zayin. He forgot in Brochas, Daf Zayin. And what did he used to do to David HaMelech? Oh, very good. I remember something. David HaMelech used to constantly ask him questions. Every time Mephibosheth would embarrass him, ask him Mephibosheth. So now, if you want to say you're going to learn by a big scientist, you might say, I'm going to learn by Einstein. Oh, Einstein's dead. You mean it's a symbol. So he said, I'm going to learn by Mephibosheth, meaning I'm going to learn by that great Talmidei Chachamim in the south. Okay. I never got one in an argument. I never lost an argument. I saw a Vart Ben Yehuda, when I saw it, I was so thrilled. All I had to do was kick myself that I didn't think of it myself. Is that a praise that you never lost an argument?
No.
Is it?
Says
the Ben Yehuda, I couldn't believe, I never thought of it myself. What did I be sure I'd do this lifetime? You need to know a few Gemara. The Gemara says in a few places, in Talmud, in Chagiga, and also in Hayos, that Rishon ben Chananya spent his life arguing with Apikolson. It's actually my book, Glimpses of Light. But the he spent his life arguing with Apikolson. Yes, quick AdWords. That's how you should buy my book, then you'd have known this. It's on the YouTube forever. One of the Esther. Rishon ben Chananya spent his life arguing with Apikolson. The Gemara says, in fact, one of the places, the Gemara says that when Rishon ben Chananya was dying, they said to him, what's going to happen when you die? Who's going to argue that because what does Rishon ben Chananya answer? He says Akshvoch always arranges it that when there's nobody to argue back, that Apikosim won't come up with any good ideas either. I don't remember. Anyway, so Rishon ben Chananya said about himself that in my lifetime of arguing with Apikosim, I never lost an argument. They never managed to find a shtech or an argument which I had to even yield a tiny bit. Sometimes they think, even that I never had to do. It's a very beautiful video. I got a lot of chesed for it. Okay. Chutz, 3 times he lost an argument. Ishta tinok v'tinokas, a woman, a child, a boy, and there's no a female girl. Ishta mai, what's the story with a woman? Pamachas, once. Now, the rule is that when you're eating a meal, you should always leave over some food in your plate. Why? Yeah, I thought so as well. But which midday is it?
Greedy.
No, it's for the waiter. That the waiter is going to be serving and they never get a chance to eat anything. So you're supposed to always leave some food on the plate and the waiter should be able to eat it so it takes in and out. Right, not by COVID, yes. But you're right, that's something else. That's the Raavad writes that when the person, instead of fasting, which makes a person weak, he's not able to learn, Raavad writes this. Well, then what a person should do is anything which he really enjoys, he shouldn't eat. That's the Raavad writes. That you should leave over what you enjoy instead of fasting. Fasting weakens you. Anyway, I once was eating by a host. Osli pulling by Yom She made me beans. Or chaltim leishatim and klum, ate the entire plate. Was that right or wrong? Wrong.
No.
Shneir, the second day leishatim and klum, I never left over anything either. B'yom shlishi k'tichtam b'melach. What she did is she ruined them. She burned them by putting so much salt that contained. Kimin shetamti, I took a tiny bit, but shachti yodim behem. I stopped eating. It wasn't tasty. Too much salt. Amali, maybe they mind chasoit. Why not eating? Amarti look, I'm sorry, I'm not hungry. That's why I didn't eat. You try to be polite, so I can't eat. You don't want to say you ruined, you're a bad cook. So what did he say? To make too much salt. If you're full, why did you stop eating when you ate the beans? You should have stopped eating when you're eating the bread. You always ate bread and beans. Why were you eating so much bread? You obviously were hungry. So why did you stop eating? I just want to say very briefly, I saw this story by one of the biographers, Shimon Zalman Auerbach was Nifter. They both have a few biographies about him. One of the biographies I saw was a Talmud of his. The Talmud is right. That Shimon Zalman, when his wife was Nifter, he had a Sephardi neighbor that was very machshav Talmidei Chachamim. So she wanted to make him supper once a week. His wife was Nifter, once a week she would make him supper. But she would put it very, very spicy. That's how the Sephardi eat it. And he was not brought up to it. He was brought up to a very, very poor family and was used to eating the plainest foods. And he struggled with it. His children used to say to him, why are you eating it? He said he wanted to make it feel good. It's not nice not to. One time he was so struggling, there was a bit of Coca-Cola, Coke on the table. He poured it over the chicken and rice to negate the sharpness. Coca-Cola has the ability to do that. And then he ate it all up like that. As the same thing, the main thing is that he shouldn't make it feel bad, that he wanted to show that he enjoyed the food. Anyway, so he said, why didn't you eat my food? So he said, I'm not hungry, so why didn't you eat the bread? What was the for what? To drink Coke? When you pour it over your chicken, not to complain. Omoli, maybe. You never left over food the first time. You don't leave food in the pot. You should have left food on the plate. So a woman won an argument with Rabbi Yeshua. Today is by a girl, what is it? Oh, that's right. Today is by what's by a young girl. Was walking the journey. Was a field, walking through a field. Was walking through it. Why are you walking through somebody's field? Imagine a Bishol walking through a field. So why are you walking through somebody's private field? It's a trodden field. Everybody's walking on it. List him sure. Other Ganovim like you have walked today. Just because everybody else, I remember, between Abbott Avenue and Cavendish, there used to be this area behind the Mikvah, shortcut. The mice was private property. And I remember once somebody came to ask from Rob, I was just sitting there. Is he allowed to walk through it? And I said, no. Oh, people walking through it. He said, listen, for sure. So I want to say one thing the Chassid Sofer says. I've got tremendous chizuk from it, huge chizuk. I said, this girl was speaking to who? The God that I do. Imagine a young girl would speak like that. What would you say to that girl? Chutzpah is not the word. And he was impressed. And Maisa was impressed. He said she won the argument. So he says, the Chassid says like this, it's a koyach in kalaliso that sometimes you have a godu that doesn't have veil, right? There's something nice as or something. Oh, God, involved. So you'd expect that what would happen is everybody likes him, everybody respects him, but they should carry on liking and respecting him. So it doesn't happen like that in Klal Yisrael. It says Klal Yisrael have this midah that they are able to discern if somebody's done the right thing and the wrong. And if he's done the wrong thing, he says it's not like that by the goyim. So by the goyim, just because somebody does something wrong, if he's popular, he carries on being popular. They let him go. By Yiddishkeit, it doesn't work like that. He said the Chassid Sofer that one time, the Chassid Sofer, the Chassid Sofer says about himself, that one time, the Chassid Sofer used to make wash and then make Kiddush, like the Yekkers. Wash and make Kiddush. I don't do that. But do you do that? Wash and then make Kiddush? Yes, I do. You do that. So the Chassid Sofer did it like you. So what happened was, the Chassid Sofer was ate by a family, and he washed and he made Kiddush and they ate bread. So what did the host think? They had him washed. The next thing the host did was slander him. Chassid Sofer said, I was the God that I do. And everybody would queue up to listen to me. But he saw something which he felt was incorrect. No, there's no leeway. I don't know. It's not hard and fast rule. It's not hard and fast rule. You're right. What?
The problem is, it's very often people. There's such a.
Yeah, you see what the Chassidus did the right thing.
No, people doing something wrong and they move on. Everyone does it.
Yes, there's a difference between moving on and saying to themselves, it doesn't matter, it's okay, and everything else. That means Klal Yisrael hold the Gedolim to a high standard and have the ability to discern, are they really the genuine thing? And she was not willing. She saw him as doing something wrong. She didn't say, oh, it's popular and everything else. No, this is because you're right, it's not a hard and fast rule. I liked it. If you don't, leave it. If you don't like it, leave it. Okay. Says that one more story. Tiduk Mai. Parachas is Malach B'derech has walked the journey. Visi Tiduk Yishua Fosh Tzach V'asol Shad sitting on the journey on the crossroads. Which way to go to the city? Obali Zuk Tzava. This one is short and long. Zuk Tzava. This one's long and short. I went the short one, which is long. I saw surrounded by fields and I couldn't get in. I came all the way back. He said to me, it's short. Did I not tell you that's also long? I kissed him and you're also great, you're also wise. A few points over here. Again, the Ben Yehuda writes that Rabbi Shua holds first Lashon Rishon, that you always go according to the first words, Rameir holds first Lashon Achron, and here he was having an argument to this little boy regarding what is the more correct. I say to you something long and short, short and long, which one is more ikka? It's halacha lemaisa machlekes. Lemaisa, that's a nice pshat of derech halacha. But derech musa, there's a very, very important message. I heard this one's from Rav Miller, the older man, was there from Motchem. And it's like this. What? No. Okay, no. That many times people look to do things short, and they end up, it takes them twice as long. Instead of building a sukkah, you don't measure properly the piece of wood you need, and then afterwards, so you just cut it, and then afterwards it doesn't fit, and then you have to work for ages to try and put it in there. What?
Measured twice, cut one.
Oh, very good. That's a nice expression. Some people do the thing long. They spend a lot of time doing it right and long and thing, and then they end up short of thing. And he said a moshel. He says in this moshel, I'll never forget it. It's a person lying in bed, wants to turn the light off. What does he do? Takes a slipper from next to his bed, throws at the light switch, and misses. Takes another slipper, misses it. And now, instead of getting out of bed, he has to look for his slippers. And he says, what does he really do then afterwards? He finds his slippers, gets back into bed, to realize he has to turn off the light, and he starts throwing it again. So get out of bed, do something properly, and then it's short. It's a nice derech muster. Okay. We're going on the journey, which direction should we go to look? No, Bruce was Meir's wife. She was a high, interesting character, as we will see. You're a fool. Which way to look? So Nashon says one point, and the Kotzker says another point. And Nashon says that when the question is obvious, because you're standing in the crossroads, everyone can understand what you're trying to say. If everyone can understand what you're trying to say, you don't need to add the words. So for Sitzkas, the Kotzker says, we will walk to Lud, because we're both going to Lud. But walking plural was not right, because you shouldn't be walking together. You should have said, which way should I go to Lud? And it's even if the two of us are going together, Eilech, that's what he says. Let's just do a tiny bit. He was learning quietly. But she kicked him. She was kicked him because he was learning quietly. It does not say, if it's arranged in all, then it's guarded. If it's arranged in all 248 of them, that's back in the whole body. Of yours, it's not guarded. If a person is still with all his body, then he's zeichet. If a person is sleeping, then he comes in and easy out. You learned quietly. After 3 years, he forgot all his learning. Deserved to die. Which Talmud was it that deserved to die? Says the Ben Yehuda. It's the same one as before. Because he learned quietly, he forgot his learning. Because he forgot his learning, he deserved to die. How do you know that somebody who forgets his learning deserves to die? It's a Mishnah Novus. It's a Mishnah Novus. The person has to die. So this person learned quietly, so if he forgot, he deserved to die. Leave him alone, because at the end of the day, he's a great person. He served a great person. Who was that? That was Rabbi Lezer. Open your mouth, and read psukim loud. Read the Mishnah loud. In order that the Torah should remain by you, the Torah should live a long time. But this is an explanation. The means those who find Torah find life. But there's another way to find the word Motzeim. Those who find it, and in those who take it out, the pair. That means Motzeim doesn't just mean to find them. Those who take them out of the mouth. Somebody who expresses clearly his Torah, he will keep it. I just want to do 2 more lines and then we'll stop it. Grab and eat chatuv v'shti. Drink. The world that we're leaving is kilula, and that's it. You can't have any more food, any more drink. This world is the same. Every minute you can enter, you can chap around. Every minute you can do chap around. Because once you leave this world, there's nothing left. This Gemara is a very famous Gemara that's song. The reason is like this: when the Steinberg was nifta, the African gave a hesped. This hesped has been quoted, I can't tell you, tens of thousands of times. He gave a huge hesped, and it shook Eretz Yisrael. What he said is like this: that when he was a little boy, he lived in a little town, and he was very chutzpahdik. He was a chutzpahdik. He was always a character. And what happened was he got kicked out of school. So I didn't know what to do with him. So he sent him to Nevada. He went to Nevada, he walked into the base of Medrash, he went to the Mashgiach, and he said, tell me off. He was a bit of a chutzpahdik. Tell me off. So what did the Mashgiach say to him? The Rabbi Yunus says, if a person doesn't tell himself off, nobody else can help him. Since you're not telling yourself off, I can't tell you off. It doesn't work. You can't tell Musa to somebody. You tell yourself off, then I can tell you off. Go into the base of Musa and learn Musa, and then come back to you. What happened was, he went to the base of Musa, he said it was a dark, quiet room. He walked in, and he sat down, and what happened was, he heard a sound singing in the background. It was the Stipler. He didn't know that it was the Stipler. Reading this Gemara again and again, that this world is like a chasna, and every minute that you can grab around, you grab. If you don't, you'll never get it again. And he said he watched the Stipler his whole life. That's how he lived. He described the husband. The Stipler used to sit with a mishnah actually on his arm, and he put his finger on his place, and he used to have listened to people all day. The Stipler used to listen a very lot to people coming in to all kinds of questions. He put his finger in his place, people would come in, he would answer, he would walk out. In the 5 seconds, in the 3 seconds it would take somebody to come out, he would read another line of the Mishnah. People would come out, and that's how he became a Stipler. You have to chap around. Every minute you go out of life, you can chap around. Because once you're gone, once you leave the chayik, then we're sholent. Yes, that's the one gone. Yes. This world. Right. Tomorrow.